I'm speaking on behalf of Marc Abrams. I'm sorry that I could not be here tonight in person, and I'm glad that another parent advocate can read this letter on my behalf. This has been a very informative year for me through my involvement as an advocate for special needs students in our district. I learned that, for the last several years, staunch advocates for a science-based approach towards reading have repeatedly been stonewalled by this board and administration. I learned that an experienced special education teacher apparently was not provided the kind of support necessary to function humanely and effectively, and ended up engaging in a pattern of emotionally and physically abusive behaviors with students under her care. I learned that our administration and this board have worked as hard as possible to prevent public disclosure to our community, made this teacher disappear as quickly as possible, and stonewalled any real exploration of all the factors that could have led our community to help provide the kind of supports that staff and students deserve. All of this occurred while the families of students who were witness to this were also misled, and a substantial number of students in that self-contained classroom showed clear signs of psychological trauma. I learned that in our middle school, self-contained classroom, a student was restrained over 30 times in the span of approximately 2 months without any parental notification. Once again, this administration and board sought to stonewall any open exploration that could lead to the community wanting us to trust our school while developing safeguards that could prevent this pattern of abuse from ever happening again. While this was happening, the lack of communication with other families whose children witnessed these events resulted in yet more students showing signs of psychological trauma. And I have personally experienced all levels of inadequate delivery of services for my stepson who has an IEP. By the way, I have his questions printed out for you also. This board is an elected group of individuals whose responsibility is to oversee our school system. In the past, other districts paid around 6 figures to send their children to our schools. Now, there is a busload of students going to and from Windward School daily. I'd like to know how much of our hard-earned taxpayer money is spent on our district's lawyers to fight families seeking appropriate services for their children, and how much more money is spent to pay for students to attend other schools. How many lawsuits is the district currently fighting regarding out-of-district placement? And how much do each of these lawsuits cost in terms of attorney fees and eventual settlement? Had we actually continued to deliver superior special education services, our school district could have a bus full of students attending our school district every day. Needless to say, from a fiduciary perspective, it appears as though this board has failed the taxpayers. The superintendent is not a board member, despite the appearance as such. The board is supposed to hold him accountable for the kinds of egregious problems that have been consistently, consistently identified by parents in our community. Instead, this board has sought to obscure and misrepresent information, rather than see to it that the superintendent actually lives up to his responsibilities and makes the necessary changes. Mr. Seleznick's often used expression, "it's complicated," was used in Chappaqua and is now being used here. It appears that this is his way of indicating he's complicit in attempting to cover up his wrongdoings. In Chappaqua, the legal record of the egregious wrongdoings has been sealed. It makes you wonder what the outcome will be here. The common component in both school districts, Mr. Seleznick. Finally, I'd like to ask the board members whose terms are up this school year, do you plan to run for re-election? If you do, I hope you know that we will run candidates against you and fill your seats with caring taxpayers who actually demand and work towards the board fulfilling its responsibilities.